can just leave that going. You can leave it going. So, welcome to podcast number 30,
Stop.
right?
Is 29 or 30?
29.
We did this last time.
We can never figure it out. I'm pretty sure it was
Just pick a random number.
No, we listed on Facebook.
Okay.
It's always, I think it's best that we never know.
Yeah.
29 or 30.
You know what? We're not that professional here.
We're not.
Yeah. We're getting awful
Rod's
near
going to
30.
check it. But anyway, we talked about denominations because Andy wanted to talk about denominations. And this is Faith Over Breakfast. And Andy's pastor of Mission Church. And I'm Eric. And I'm pastor of the village, along with Rod, who visited us. It was nice to have Rod. He has a beautiful voice.
That's right. Now, if you're struggling to hang in there to the end, though, Eric had something he wanted to talk about that he throws right in the mix at the very end, a very, very deep theological, philosophical question that he puts on the table. So, hang in there. That's coming, too.
Yeah, that was,
And in the middle, we analyze our breakfast order, which, believe it or not, might tell you something about us.
That's the highlight
of
our podcast.
So welcome to the podcast, and we hope you enjoy. Well, good morning. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. I'm here with my buddy Eric Deepen from the village. As usual, my name's Andy Littleton, but we have a friend along.
Oh, I wouldn't call him a friend.
You wouldn't call him? What would you call him?
He's a co-worker.
A co-worker, merely a professional relationship.
Hi guys, we ready to order?
Yeah, you're on the mic, so just
hope you don't mind
be
being
prepared.
on the mic.
Yeah. What are you getting, Eric?
I'm going to get the Aunt Linda scrambled eggs, bacon, and I would like hash browns, well done, and a toast.
What kind?
Whole wheat?
Oh wait, definitely.
Do the shrimp omelet
Shrimp omelet.
with cottage cheese instead of potatoes, and some salsa, English muffin,
Awesome.
and no garnish, no little piece of paper under the thing. Just the plain food.
Just cottage
I have a
cheese.
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And no plate.
No plate.
Yeah.
No plate.
I'll just put it on the table.
Yeah. And I'll take California omelet with no potatoes and English muffin.
English muffin. Did you want fruit instead or anything like that?
That's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Nope, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, no, I would just say he's more like he's yoked to me for eternally.
Wow, it's like a marriage.
Yeah, it's kind of like a marriage.
That's cool.
It's a burden, is what it
It
is.
is a burden and a blessing.
But so the man with the deep, silky smooth voice.
There, yeah,
Right here
the
is
radio voice.
The radio
actual
voice,
radio
the actual radio voice,
Right.
is Rod Hugan from the village, who is Eric's co-pastor,
And good friend.
And good. Oh, okay. They actually are friends.
You know, this is how I know he's a friend, is I still have his Christmas present.
I have your Christmas
In my...
present.
Do I have it in my
I don't
bag?
have it with me. Dang it! I forgot to bring it. I should have brought it.
Oh, I don't know. You know what? I still have your present, and I've had it for a long time.
I know. I have your
think
present
I
as well.
hope I didn't lose it.
It's,
Oh, man.
It's sitting on the couch.
This is how good a
This
friend
this
we
is going to be what it is. Does everybody want to listen to this? I don't know. Anyway, we're typically we typically do this little recording on a Tuesday, typically
Yes.
over at XO Coffee, though not last week. But today we're at Bisbee Breakfast Club, the one on Broadway Boulevard, because we had stuff come up. I had a building inspection. Eric had an important phone call last week, and so we pushed it to another breakfast time, which is a standing breakfast between Rod and I. So here we are.
I had to reschedule my date with my daughter in the morning to do this.
Oh wow!
Oh man, that's
But she
maybe
listens,
should we talk
she
about
listens,
boundaries?
So yeah, boundaries. She now is on online school, so she has flexible schedule. So now she and I actually get a little bit more time to hang out, which is fun.
Okay.
So I swing by the house between the meetings, or have coffee with her, or chat while she's doing her homework, or we go out for lunch spontaneously. So it's fun.
That's pretty sweet. Well, remind everybody. So you guys are at the village. Village has been around for about 15 years, 16,
2001.
Yeah, more like
17 years.
So, yeah.
And so we, part of what I want to talk about is denominations. Whether you guys want to talk about it or not, that's debatable. But you guys, tell me where you were coming from church-wise before you guys planted this church called the Village together.
No, you start, Rob.
I was born and raised in the Christian Reformed Church, kind of a Presbyterian offshoot that nobody ever really hears about or knows about. Grew up in Pella, Iowa, where there were like 6 Christian Reformed churches in a town of 10,000 people. So comes out of the Dutch Reformed background.
And you are Dutch.
And I'm Dutch. Moved to Phoenix when I was like 8 years old, and joined the Christian Reformed Church there, went to the schools that the churches sponsored. And just a lifelong part of that.
Yeah.
Steeped in its traditions and its theology and its way of seeing the world and seeing God. It's fun.
Okay. And Eric, your background, a little more,
Eclectic.
a little less rooted, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but gosh, the best way to say it is, no matter where I went to church as a kid, my father's heart is in the Brethren tradition.
Yeah.
Not the Brethren tradition where you get baptized forward, backwards, forwards, and more connected to the Mennonites, less connected to the Mennonites, and more connected to the Reformed movement.
Oh, okay. I thought they were sort of more Anabaptist.
Yeah.
Okay. But still, it all goes back.
A different, but yeah. Anyway, that branch of Brethren. But anyway, so I worked at a Southern Baptist church as non-paid staff. Then I worked at an Evangelical Presbyterian church, and that's when I met Rod, because I had to get him hired to fill the pulpit.
Oh, boy.
That was pulpit supply, which is a great,
it's a great
phrase.
term.
Like
Yeah.
I actually had to go to Denver and get approved to be pulpit supply by the muckety-mucks of the EPC church denomination. So,
I've been talking with 3 guys who a church just came to them in town and just said, could you guys, we don't have a pastor, could you 3 guys just fill all the preaching at our church?
Right.
But for you had to go get approved.
I had to get approved.
Which brings up some stuff about denominations.
Reformed folks are kind of
So, out of
picky about who they
curiosity,
let preach.
what church was that?
I forget the name.
Forget the name.
Sorry.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. It was a huge mega church. No, I don't know.
How do you locate 3 guys? Like, how's that? That's the
Yeah, I
tradition.
think there was a mentor of a wife who
okay.
was connected. Somehow that's how it came about. And they're good guys, actually. I'm not saying like, wow, what a bad decision, but good guys. But it's just like it struck me that there's certain traditions maybe where that would have been a normal thing, but churches used to be rooted in church, in communities of churches, and there were usually some kind of guidelines, and it wasn't just like somebody could come preach when they don't even know what your theology really is. That's just different.
Yes.
And so, I grew up all over the place.
You kind of started Pentecostal, did you not?
Yeah, well, so my my mother came to Christ in the Pentecostal church. My dad grew up Lutheran, so they found the most, I would assume, the most mild Pentecostal church they could find, in which my dad wasn't terrified.
Yeah.
But my mom still got to be expressive, and so we always grew up in this tension of trying to figure that out. So that led to going to all the other churches. So we did. When I was young, we were in a Pentecostal church. Then we were in a Southern Baptist church. Then, oh goodness, I went to a Church of God, which is kind of a Wesleyan offshoot.
Do you remember if it was Anderson, Indiana, or Cleveland?
Anderson, I do remember. And and then I moved off to Chicago, and I actually went to a Christian Reformed church. I worked at one, and then came back to Tucson, worked for the Salvation Army, which is really a church denomination of sorts. And then I worked in Presbyterian Church in America, and now I am in just a little independent church. But I don't know. I'm back and forth on whether I think that's a good thing. So that's my journey with it. Now, so I think a lot of people, I think that denominations are forming for different reasons now. Because I was just talking to somebody about a new one that they formed a new denomination.
They did.
Yeah,
I thought like there was some, like at some point we all just decided we're going to stop forming. We'll just
Yeah.
People are still forming actual
they're forming them.
denominations.
They're forming them. Yeah, so this one was, and you look at it, and the doctrine is very simple. There's you tend to get that it has more to do with how it's designed and how it works well for folks. It's easier to start a church and have support. There's church networks.
Yeah, they're networks.
And this one that I was looking at, I think, is similar to a network, but they've gone ahead and said, no, it's a denomination. Because networks, you give money in and they give you support, but there's not really accountability, from what I can tell. And so this one was adding in that layer of accountability. But denominations used to form for different reasons. I'm not sure people necessarily know why we have them. So, I don't know. Rod, why do we have denominations?
Well, back when I was a kid in the 1400s, yeah, I don't know. We formed primarily around a theological cause, right? There was always some reason why the other side was anathema to us. They were bad. They didn't believe in the sovereignty of God, or they didn't believe in whatever. And so we formed. It was always a separatist thing. It was to pull us apart from what the other was.
Right.
Whereas I think in the origins of the Catholic Church, the mother church, the church, it was the whole idea of a parish.
It was based on the community.
Right, you were church. The church was part of that whole community, and everyone belonged, whether they knew it or not. Mm-hmm. And now, and then when the Reformation happened, then there was disputes amongst the various reformers as to what were the important things to emphasize and what wasn't important, and disagreements, and people died at the stake over some of this stuff, right?
Which is wild.
It's crazy, and so that's. I find it interesting because one thing that then became the thing was exactly what you said: accountability, right?
Yeah.
You accept this doctrinal stand and you defend it, and that's what you built around. And if you didn't, then you went off and joined some other camp or started. Like the CRC broke off the Christian Reformed Church broke off the Reformed Church in America because of things like hymn singing instead of singing the Psalms, or like
slavery.
Right.
Slavery, baptism.
Yeah, there was always some reason to divide. Right?
There seems to have been a huge.
California. I got you guys some extra napkins. Do we need anything else over here? A refill?
Oh yeah.
What did you have?
Iced tea.
Iced tea?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, from what I understand, there's a lot of it too had to do with. You had state churches, in Europe,
Right.
And so, and there were probably city churches in the early church, and then they eventually decided to set up bishops over areas, and that's maybe where you could say it all came from. And then you had like state churches in Europe, especially around the time of the Reformation. When there's a break off. Oh, thank you. Yeah, please. So yeah, especially when there's a break off from Catholicism and the organization isn't there, they started forming the state churches.
Right.
And then you start to have things crop up within the states, or the countries that divide, and that's, you start to see baptism, views on the end times, views on church government, and things of that nature. And then you've got the New World, and there's all these folks come to America. And then with this new, the state churches have gone away. So now it's, you've got Dutch Reformed people coming, but now they're starting to have different ideas, and they don't need to be linked up to a state church. So it seems like then you can just kind of subdivide off even more. So a lot of it, It's interesting how kind of changes in the world affected changes in the church, but also changes in the church affected changes in the world. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's
Well,
how.
I think primarily in America, I mean, simplify history here, but
Yeah.
two big movements within early church or early American history is the Reformed Baptist movement and the Puritan movement.
Okay.
Because a lot of what we experience as Baptist theology now and didn't start until the 1800s, but the Reformed Baptists were a strong missionary movement because most Baptists were Reformed.
Yeah.
But and then the Puritan movement, obviously, which in some ways you could say it includes like pretty much all Reformed in kind of
Branches.
philosophy and thinking.
Yeah.
And then sort of like the whole what you were talking about in your influence, like the Pentecostal, the Church of God, all those kinds that come out of the 1800s and come out of
Revivals.
and I mean, there's a lot of history we can go over. But what we kind of find now is that we're stuck in this place where we have all of these different little
Yeah. So
institutions,
now there's tons of these little organizations,
little or big,
little or big, that come from all of this, and here we are today, and we're in what people are calling a post-Christian society, right? Where generally the assumptions aren't Christian anymore, but we've got all of these organizations left over, and the question for people in churches is, should I bother with being in one of those or not? So, Rod, you and I have talked about this a lot. Why are you in one?
Why am I in?
Still.
I think when you're born into something, it shapes you, right? And so I really have a great appreciation for the training that I got as a kid between Sunday school and the Christian elementary schools that were started by the parents. The whole idea of the catechism classes, memorizing scripture, just all those things were part of being inculcated into the denomination. It's like,
Some people hate that stuff.
Right.
But you look back on it.
I hated it then. Everybody hated it.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to sit in a catechism class?
Yeah.
And on a Wednesday night and have to memorize the answers and be able to raise. Yeah, no one likes that. But there was a discipline to it, a requirement. Your parents just did it. It was what was done. It wasn't like you invented how am I going to raise my children. That had already been decided 2 centuries before. This is what you do. So my appreciation for it now is I'm steeped in some pretty good theology and some a way of thinking. The Apostles' Creed, we recite the Apostles' Creed at the village every other Sunday. And I see these little kids doing it, and it's really fun. It's like we're inculcating those same things into our kids, and so they're learning a good basic theological position, whether they know it or not, or appreciate it or not. Doesn't matter. It's there. So I think that was a huge benefit in my later life to have some grounding, I guess I would call it.
So you grew up in it, but then you and Eric start the Village, which is not a Christian Reformed church per se.
Correct.
But you two are both now ordained in the Christian Reformed church, and so you encouraged Eric toward this, though he did not grow up in it,
nor want to do it,
nor actually want to do it. So I'm really interested in sharing with people. I've heard about this, but sharing with people that journey of how why you encouraged it to somebody who didn't grow up into it and didn't really need to do it in a way, and then Eric, why you ended up deciding to do it.
I think the part of me because the Christian Reformed Church sent me out to plant a church, I felt an obligation to repay that debt, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted the village to be a Christian Reformed Church. But as we were gathering people, and as Eric and I worked out a relationship, you realize this is not going to happen. And at one point, my credentials got challenged by the church that held them because I wasn't. That they recognized rightfully that I wasn't building a Christian Reformed Church. And I think I pushed pretty hard early on, and then kind of gave up that whole idea when I realized it wasn't going to happen the way I had imagined. Part of it is just I have a sense of loyalty, and I wanted to repay a debt. That was an important thing.
And probably, from my experience, that was probably a more internal conflict with Rod than an external conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He never in leadership, I don't think in one leadership meeting did he ever push for the village to be part of the Christian Reformed Church. There were a few leadership meetings early on where it was talked about.
But it didn't feel like we need to repay a debt. Yeah.
I think part of that is the recognition, as we talked about earlier, that society has just completely changed. Mm-hmm. And so that those denominational loyalties just don't exist. And to force them or push them, instead take the principles and take the valuable things that you learn in them and, promulgate those, push those forward. And so I could take those basic Reformed doctrines that I grew up with and push those and did. For instance, just how we do with our kids' ministry. If you come out of some church backgrounds, it's all about the church has to provide all this training and care for the kids. That's the church's responsibility. Yeah. But I come out of a system of thought that says, no, it's the parents' job to raise up their children in the fear of the Lord. That's the scriptural injunction. So the parents should do this. And so instead of getting, what are we going to do for the kids, it's get all the parents together and let the parents decide what they want to do for the kids, and then walk alongside that as leaders in the church and say, how can we help accomplish that? So like the Christian schools that the Christian Reformed Church was so, they just always built them.
Yeah.
It wasn't the It wasn't the Christian Reformed Church that built them. It was the parents who said, let's band together and raise our children in the fear of the Lord. So I think that was the big, for me, that was push the ideas and the doctrines, don't push the actual denominational connection. Right.
Well, and I think probably the easier, the thing that was nice about Rod and I is just, I was Reformed for the most part, and
can you? I think everybody that listens has heard that term, but can you just give a 2-sentence definition of what that means?
If you just say Reformed, really all you're legitimately saying is that you come from either a Calvinist, Lutheran, or Zwingli
now we have more terms.
Influence, right? So we're coming from the Protestant, early Protestant formations.
Now we have more terms.
So when we say Reformed, we're saying that we move from more specific. When this little group says Reformed,
wait, this is the 2-sentence. Okay.
No, well, we'll just that we come from a more Calvinist perspective, so we got to explain what that means. But that's your two.
I would say there's an emphasis on the power of God in salvation.
Yes, that would be.
Would that be an quick?
I think that's true.
Okay.
Sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strong influence on that. Yeah.
And there's more. There's a lot more. But.
Oh yeah.
When I think of Reformed, I think of it very historically. So I don't tend to think of it in its theological form.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. So
baptism, really, infant baptism was really the big thing. But the pitch that Rod gave me to join the CRC, and what he usually used as his selling points, were two things. One, I could change the denomination.
Which you have.
And two, the denomination is dying at some level and they have a lot of money. Those really were his two pitches. I'm sure you've heard a similar pitch.
Perhaps.
Well, one of the things is
And that they'll offer you accountability. So those were his three.
denominations do have a lot of resources, and those, and as they die, if you're ever around dying organizations, they have resources. They don't have a mission, but they have resources, and so I'd like to see those passed on to another generation, even if it's not within the fold of the denomination necessarily. But I think there's some value in. I want to, and I've had that experience of churches that are dying. For a while, I helped close down several churches. They were calling me the Dr. Kevorkian of the church growth movement because I'd show up and preach for them, and then 9 months later they closed down. So walking people through that, but then those resources, those church buildings get sold or they get rented out or whatever it is, and you've taken advantage of that. And a church that's dying has fewer and fewer people.
So then they have space, and so they need income, and that's how our whole rental situation has worked over the past few years. And even though the building we bought just now isn't from a church, it's similar. It's an old organization that's getting smaller and has resources, has space, and so on. So yeah, you're right, absolutely. So what ended up, Eric? Why'd you end up doing it?
Why'd I join?
Yeah,
for those reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I realized that there were people who cared about me. I lived in that context, and I also, as a good postmodernist, said, I can baptize infants and not,
I can do anything.
I can and not agree with it. Like there are certain baptizing infants. There's legitimate theology in which I feel I can make a strong biblical argument for, and
Thank you.
one that I can make a strong argument against.
Yeah.
But it's not going to impact it. And then through my ministry, what I've found is that people who feel like they're being chased down by God, but they're not followers of God, you usually ask one question: have you been baptized as an infant? And 90% of the time the answer is yes.
Yeah.
My parents were Lutheran and they baptized me, and I'm like, well, because you were given to God.
Yeah.
So I've seen it. There's something in it. So
I think that's huge for me. On my mother's side, we can trace our lineage all the way back to when Napoleon invaded the Netherlands and forced all the people to take on Christian names. And when you look through those records, my cousin compiled all those records. You see the baptismal certificates, infant baptism, going all the way back to that time on my mother's side. So I stand in this huge, long line of people who were baptized as infants, and that's just a powerful thing, a tradition, I think, a beautiful part of what God does, right? Works through the ages for those who were faithful and then it takes because it's Reformed, it takes the onus off of the individual to decide, and it recognizes God's sovereignty and God.
That God works through families and communities, which is absolutely true, kind of whether or not. I mean, everybody thinks that's why people dedicate children and raise them in the church and so on and so forth. Sometimes I think a lot of Reformed doctrine is assumed by folks and they don't realize it. But stuff like, well, of course we think he works through families and communities. Just the question is, is the person's entrance into the church when that work begins or once they confess it?
Right.
And that's I guess, where the
linchpin is. And we did have to confess it, right? We all stood up. I made profession of faith, my faith, when I was a teenager, and it was acknowledged that I was taking hold of those vows that my parents had made before God and making them my own.
So, in my church right now, I could think of perhaps one family, maybe not even one family, who seems to be concerned about being a part of a denomination. Everybody else, it's not even on their radar. So two people in our day who are not so much concerned, younger folks, post-Christian, whatever. What would you say is the one big reason you should be in a denomination, and the one big reason it doesn't matter?
Oddly, I think it's because there you'll run into things you disagree with.
Yeah. Instead of being in an echo chamber.
Right. I think you look at Facebook, it's just an echo chamber. You keep unfriending people that don't think like you do or don't believe the way you do. So you get your faith gets challenged in a denomination. Your commitments get challenged, and I know to me that's valuable. I think, and then to have to conform or to submit to someone else, that's huge. When I look back at my life, the things I regret the most, oddly, are the times I didn't submit. Like submitting to doing infant dedications.
Right.
Eric asked me to dedicate his daughter. And that was hard because it violated something that I held dear, right?
Yeah.
And then to do that was powerful. It was a powerful moment where I could say, I love this little girl and her dad and mom.
Yeah.
More than I loved this belief that I've always held, and I want to honor. And then what really touched my heart was Eric saying, well, Rod, you're way too old to have any more kids, which was true. You're not going to have any more kids, but if you ever have any grandkids, I would love to baptize them as infants, so that he would take his firmly held belief as well and submit that. I think that was just a precious moment that you would never get if you're not part of something that has an external standard.
Yeah. I think, to piggyback on that, I would encourage people to think, when you live in a time in which, by and large, people don't submit to anything, and it's all about personal preference. That would be the very moment to think I ought to look for places to submit to things. I shouldn't just wholesale accept the way that things are, because every era has its regrets. And though the previous eras maybe submitted to things they shouldn't have and just blindly submitted to things, and that wasn't good, to swing the pendulum and submit to nothing and be connected to nothing and defer to nothing, there will be similar regrets and holes in it. So you should really think about that and consider submitting to some things you do not want to do, which goes really would be a countercultural thing. So as I've said to some people, if you want to be different, don't go be like everybody else.
Right.
There you go. So try that on for size. Maybe the old ways that really your parents started rejecting shouldn't be utterly rejected. Maybe they should just be reformed.
Right. Well, and I think what does resonate and where you might find younger people stepping into denominations is relationally.
Yeah.
It's all about relationships. So even in our church, it is about, if our church were to join the Christian Reformed Church, or even yours, it's based on relationship. And
absolutely.
Really
that's the only reason we're thinking about it is because of our friendship with you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really is, why does God have these people in front of me at this time?
Yeah.
And what is he inviting me into in all of that?
Yeah.
And that's how I live my life often, is just, what is God, why is Andy in my life? What is God calling me to submit to because of Andy? What's God calling me to,
He's making me submit to having a topic for this podcast.
Yeah, why is he inviting me into these stupid things? Yeah. So, those are important ways, I think, of understanding our life.
Yeah.
Instead of being well, okay, I don't like this little thing about this thing, so, I don't like that person, I don't like this organization, I don't like this,
So I'll have nothing to do with any of it until I find the perfect people. Right. Yeah.
And
good luck with that.
There's no perfect organization, there's no perfect belief systems.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, okay, denominations, we've talked about it. My next thought that I had
By the way, before we go on, that is the other reason for I think you have that's that second thing that he was talking about is not just that they have resources, because that's pretty mercenary,
Right.
but that you have a longing, I think, to and to be challenged. But it is about the fact that they also provide a level of accountability, of coming against what you think you have to believe. And I think we're so afraid of that. We're so challenged by that I can't have someone just totally disagree with me, think I'm stupid, and tell me so. And then the other huge part of that is then going in and reforming the thing. You can't reform something from outside of it.
Right.
It's never worked. People think they can. You can't really reform it. Martin Luther tried desperately to reform the church from inside the church. That was the whole goal. Same with Calvin. Same with all those reformers. They worked hard, and then when they finally couldn't do it, they broke off. But I think if you really want to reshape the Christian Reformed Church in North America, you can't do it from standing outside yelling at it saying you're stupid and you're wrong.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. No one cares. But from inside, you get a voice and you get to speak into that, and I think that's pretty cool.
And I think generally that's an issue. I actually don't know that I want to talk about the State of the Union address much the more I think about it, but the State of the Union address just happened, and so I'm thinking about just in general culturally, we have a lot of cultural critics. There are a lot of people who are not happy with one side or the other. But the thing I hear in younger people is that they will say, I'm not political. Or, like, I have no interest in being involved in that kind of stuff. But they sure are going to critique it, especially when it negatively impacts them. And it's the same thing would be true of faith. I'm not religious. I don't, or I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, and the religions or this or that, and I disagree with them. Well, yeah, but you're not a part of anything,
right?
So how, at some point that's all going to fall apart, and what are you going to do when somebody criticizes you because now you stand alone? I don't know.
Well, that's kind of funny. I was talking with some people at church about basketball and about Sean Miller, and I was critiquing Sean Miller's ability to coach. And so we're going on, and finally, and so is this other person who listens to the podcast, who's actually been on the podcast, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway...
I can't believe Kevin would critique anybody.
Yeah, so, what he said was very fascinating. He's like, okay, well... Sean Miller knows way more about basketball than we do. And half joking, he said, how would you feel if he walked in here and was like, well, Eric doesn't know anything about being a pastor. Look at the way he does blah, 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 blah. We are a culture that easily, either worships. So, Tom Brady versus time. The man's a god. We all worship him or hate him, but we worship him at some level. We worship this thing.
Does he play basketball?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, or we just tear it down and destroy it. We are on those two extremes, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, it's like on comedians in cars getting coffee. I saw Jerry saying it's about skating. When someone puts skates on, they're either gone to the way far end of doing like weird, kind of effeminate skating, or we have to go all the way to the other end and beat the heck out of each other.
That's right.
But we can't just have normal skating. There's not. That's
we can't just go around in circles. Yeah, or it's either pirouettes or bloody faces.
Yeah. Neither.
True, Jerry. Too true.
Anyway.
So the thought I just had is I want to learn about each of us based on what we just ordered for breakfast, because all of you listeners, you heard our order.
Right.
You know what we ordered here at Bisbee Breakfast Club. I want to give you a little background on this. So Rod and I, we come here all the time, and lately get the same thing. My order has changed slightly. Rod's not at all. Same thing, including the no doily and the no garnish.
Those are important elements.
Yeah. Eric was very frustrated leading up to his order because why? The menu. You couldn't. Where's the standard stuff?
Yeah, I want to know where the scrambled eggs and the bacon and the hash browns, which actually I think I said home fries, well done, but she sent me hash browns.
Dang,
That was fun.
their home fries aren't bad. Though I don't order them anymore. So, okay. So let's... What from the ordering experience, what Eric and I, let's take on Rod.
Right.
Rod and I will take on Eric.
Okay.
You two take
All right,
on me.
here we
What do
go.
we learn about... So, Eric, what do we learn about Rod from his order?
All right, well, I think Rod tends to be a man of habit,
Oh, yeah.
so
Man
he
of
likes
habit.
the same things.
Same thing every time.
Yeah. That's why he's Christian Reformed. He's
that
very
it?
structured. He can just keep, he knows what to expect.
There's no doily.
There's no doily. No prayer doily, so he's good on that
And
one.
no lettuce in the,
No
in
lettuce.
the cottage cheese cup.
And if you went to a Christian Reformed potluck, would there be lettuce? Do they
Of
have?
course, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's not that. That's
No.
that's not coming from there.
So I think, yeah, he's a man of habit.
He doesn't like frills.
He doesn't like grill.
Like save the frills, right?
But he likes a good hearty breakfast.
Yeah, a good hearty
He's
breakfast.
the man that he likes his good hearty breakfast.
What about all the pepper on the cottage cheese? What is that about? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you take that on.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's like one of these. I don't know. Here's a wild guess. Like, I should eat cottage cheese, but just by itself it tastes horrific. So I put ketchup, or I put a salsa and pepper in it.
See, what you
These
have
are all
to,
childhood things.
what you have
Yeah.
to understand is I'm a Dutch kid, and so when you're a Dutch kid, you eat potatoes for every meal all the time. Like, you always have potatoes.
So the side of potatoes here is like,
But
forget
potatoes turn to sugar, and when you're old and fat, and you got diabetes issues, and you got blood sugar issues, potatoes are really bad for you. So you have to find an alternate. And so cottage, who wants fruit? That's more sugar. That's just
that. And I have a really hard time with fruit for breakfast.
that's just
or
wrong
fruit.
on so many levels.
My family love my family, but they try to. It'll be like spaghetti and meatballs. Would you like some fruit with that?
Right?
No,
yeah, no,
I don't
no.
want fruit.
Right? Exactly.
That's weird. There's no.
And so,
I'm totally with you.
and then my dad, my mother would like literally pour half a thing of pepper on his egg. Like he loved eggs with lots of pepper, and so do I. And so I just put it in cottage cheese and then some salsa as well. Because yes, it's bland and boring otherwise, and you got to have a little spice within your routines.
Okay, so Rod is a man of habit, but he likes a little spice
All right.
within his routines. You can interpret that however you
Yeah,
want.
that's a good thing. And he has sort of an ancient tie to his food eating.
Yes,
then-
everything goes back.
Yeah,
And then,
everything
so,
goes-
and then
in
some,
his life, yes, everything
Yeah.
does go back.
and then,
Yeah.
and then some days I just get mad and order something completely different just because I want variety.
Yeah.
I want something new.
You and
then
I
you-
have
and then
just
you-
never witnessed that.
Yeah.
My-
And then you go to multiple breakfasts a day. So some of the old CRC guys say, Rod would meet me for breakfast,
Right.
and then he would have a breakfast meeting afterward with
Right.
somebody else. So
I'm a big breakfast fan. There's no doubt about that. I like to cook breakfast. I like to make breakfast too. So, and the other thing is my wife and I, when we got married, had an agreement that if there was ever anything on the menu that we had never had,
yeah,
we would be required to order it and try it, which my wife thinks was crazy, but because she didn't like that rule, but we did it, and we've done it all these years. But now there's not a single thing on the Bisbee Breakfast Club menu that I've
yeah.
had in some way or shape or form. So,
I like if I go somewhere and there's like where was I? One of the Carolinas. I think it was North Carolina, and there was some food that was, it was like the grits with the gravy that was made from last night's coffee and all that. That it's like I'd never seen this before, but I knew it was a big thing, so I had to have it. So I love trying that. But then, you guys are supposed to analyze me.
Yeah,
forget that.
Yeah. So what did you had?
You don't even know what I had. What does that mean?
Yeah, it means nothing.
you always have
Yep.
the omelet, the California omelet with avocado.
Yeah.
What comes in that? I mean, I'm
Bacon.
new here. I don't
Yeah.
eat here.
Bacon, avocado, cheese.
Does California eat?
California-y. Yeah. Rod has accused me of... racism because I wouldn't order Mexican things? What's up with that, man?
Race. Early on, we met in a different place, and you really mocked and made fun of things like, huevos rancheros and stuff like that. You were really putting them down, and I noticed a common theme is that they all
We're Mexican.
and so I was concerned about whether or not you were like secretly a racist.
So the place, though, can we clarify? This place serving these things is the least Mexican food-ish place ever.
There is that.
Okay.
And,
So the
and
authenticity
eventually-
of these items.
I think
So it's more like a purist.
I think I eventually conceded that point and
Yeah.
decided you probably weren't racist, but
I live in
Just more
Tucson,
purist.
and so I'm not going
Right.
to eat, Mexican food at the Good Egg.
it's interesting.
Amen to that. I
Right.
wouldn't touch Mexican food if I could. Oh,
But one of the things that I noticed about your breakfast is that in the early days you had it as it came,
Yeah,
and
true.
and so you had potatoes and you had which you liked, and
Yeah.
you had
I'm good.
the omelet, and you didn't get I forget what kind of toast came with it.
Yeah, I would just get the toast, like
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
Whatever came with it. But then you switched and you went to the English muffin, which I think was my influence because I'm fond of
Well,
English muffin.
and they look delicious. And the other part of the toast, there's 4 slices. The English muffin, there's 2 halves.
Right, it's less bread.
Less
which is
bread.
important.
Yeah, when I got the whole wheat bread, I was like, oh,
That is a plate full of bread right
yeah.
there. Yeah.
That's a lot.
I shouldn't eat for the rest of the day.
Yes.
But then I also noticed that you got rid of the potatoes
Yeah.
and started getting fruit, but you turned your nose up at the fruit, so it was weird. It was like you kind of forced yourself to eat fruit briefly.
And then I was like, no,
and
never
then
mind.
she offered like tomatoes, but you didn't want tomatoes.
Yeah, I didn't want
And you didn't want cottage cheese.
No.
I'm not sure what that
So
is.
pretty much what you're saying is he actually doesn't like eating here, and he'd much rather eat at XO.
So what he really wants
I like
is,
eating here.
so what he
Okay,
really
check.
wants.
That's all.
And then there's this weird thing because he comes in one day and says, we missed the last 2 weeks and we didn't meet, and man, I have this craving for my California omelet, so I came here the other day when
Just
we
to
weren't
get
meeting just to get the omelet. So
That happened. Like,
So
I go to
maybe-
Brugger's, which I am not a Brugger's guy, but I get the same sandwich there. Eric is a Brugger's guy. I get the same sandwich there every time, though I'm always kind of like, Brugger's. But now, when I go a few weeks without that sandwich, all of a sudden I'm like, I want that sandwich.
So maybe what his food indicates that there's some addiction issues built into his food ordering.
there is that. But I also think he
So maybe he has an addictive personality. So there are different elements in his life where he has things that he has a hard time saying no to.
and then he also
No.
takes complex things and makes them simple.
Yeah, he deconstructs things.
He likes to deconstruct and just find, here's the basic element out of all this stuff. What I really like
There you go.
is,
But not immediately.
right.
Yeah.
It takes him a long time.
Studies things.
He's a slow processor.
You know what? That's also true because say we put a little addition on our house, but 4 years ago I drew the idea on a napkin, okay, and I was just randomly at a restaurant. And I was like, oh, that's where it could go, and then my method for doing that is not get the plans, save the money. It's I'll just marinate on it, and then I started buying supplies. So I had this little storage box where I would put the supplies away, and then once I felt I had about everything, there was a certain point where I made, let's start, let's change. And so it exists now 4 years later, but it didn't happen. It was kind of this test the waters process. How's this going? Is it working? Can I find this stuff? Is it gonna? I don't know.
Yeah,
I see that I see that in church too.
Right.
And I don't.
Yep.
I come in and I'll just kind of I'll do standard things and then I'll move them with time.
Like I said, slow processor.
Yeah, there you go.
All right,
Now
Eric.
it's your turn.
Eric was there was some real deep frustration on the menu.
Yeah.
Where are the things that I'm looking? Where's what I want? Where's normalcy?
On every On every breakfast menu, there's standard bacon and eggs.
The 1 egg, the 2 egg
You
meal.
want 1 egg,
Yeah.
2 egg. You want bacon, ham or sausage, hash browns or home fries.
Yeah.
There's that, and it's not clear on this menu.
It is not, and I'm with it. You're right, Eric. It wasn't. Yeah.
And he knows what he wants. He just can't find it.
Still looking. Still haven't found what I'm looking for.
And that's just Eric's life.
He is always inventive and creative and trying to find new ways to do old-fashioned things.
But does he quite find it? What he's looking
I
for?
think the last time you guys were talking about renaming things. So he takes these old standard
Yeah.
things like congregational meetings and then has to rename them and recreate them and make them better.
And what do people say? That's the best congregational meeting I've ever been in my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with the content of the meeting. It's the name.
No, it has everything to do with
I'm
the content
kidding.
of the meeting.
No, it really is the name. We say drumming circle and boom. People are like, this is the best thing I've ever done.
Like, whoa, this is crazy. I can't believe we do a drumming circle at this church.
Yes. Except all the old people and the people who can't stand loud noises who have to go out of the room
Yeah.
while the drumming is happening. But
There's that.
other than that,
Yeah, oh, there you go. Mine was short. But I should say why I do order the exact same thing in every breakfast place. Because breakfast, for me, I don't like a lot of breakfast. So that was a big breakfast, bacon,
Yeah.
eggs. And all the options, like if you order an omelet like you, that seems overwhelming food-wise. I'm like, can I eat all of that? That seems like a lot of food. And then if I order pancakes, I feel like my blood sugar, like I'm just going to be messed
Pancakes
up
are
all
crazy.
day.
Yeah.
And I don't like, why is anybody eating cottage cheese for breakfast? That's gross.
That is a great question.
Like, so really what I want is just like a little breakfast. And I probably should have huge breakfast and not eat a lot the rest of the day, but I don't.
I like big breakfast, little dinner. That's how I like it.
one of the other reasons for eating cottage cheese is I hate milk. I don't drink milk. I don't like milk. I never have milk. I don't even have milk with cookies. So it's my one way to get...
Because you don't eat cheese.
Cheese and cottage cheese become the way in which I get the good things from milk.
Yeah, well, there you go. I don't drink milk either.
I have milk in my coffee. I don't just drink milk.
Yeah,
My dad gave me this
And
whole
what's that
spiel where he was just like, milk is for baby cows, not adult cows. I don't know if there's any reason to give any credence to that, but for some reason I was like, oh man. Like my whole life, that's in my head. Like, this is for a growing cow. I'm already grown. Look at me. I'm getting a beer belly. I don't need milk.
Wow.
But beer's fine. Just not milk. I don't know. It's not logical.
We had to drink milk because that's how you got strong bones.
I've heard that. Yeah. Are your bones strong?
I'm guessing I have never, odd fact, I've never had a broken bone.
Oh.
I never broke a leg or an arm
Me neither.
or anything. So.
I actually haven't either.
Wow.
Wow, 3 men without any broken bones.
That's pretty
Weird.
scary. Perhaps we're not the risk takers that we imagine ourselves to be.
Yeah, we're these crazy church planners. Probably true. I'm sure if Nick were here, he'd be like, oh, I broke my skull last
Right,
week.
yeah. 14 bones. I probably broke a toe. You know, everybody breaks a toe.
Yeah, I'm sure I broke the toe. I don't know.
I think I might have broke my thumb years ago when I tried to stuff some basketball. And
I think I
hit
broke
it
a
on the
finger,
rim.
but I
Yeah.
didn't go in for that. It
Right.
just sort of never grew straight.
Right. It still hurts
Yeah.
whenever the weather changes.
You know, whatever. So, hey, look at that! 52 minutes later.
52 minutes.
I think
Oh, come
that's.
on. Well, we got plenty of time. We can make this podcast go along.
Oh my gosh, is that a good idea? What you want to talk about more?
I want to talk about one thing because it
Okay.
was interesting, and I want to get it out there. Maybe we can talk about it more. It's
Okay.
a more serious things. We're going to dive really deep.
Whoa,
Okay, we're gonna dive
real fast,
real fast,
and then we're going
into
to come
the
up for air and come back to it
Garden
later.
of Gethsemane. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an interesting thing about Jesus' story. And it's more complex, but we can just do the short version.
Yes.
When Jesus says, I don't want to do this, basically.
Right.
Some of it, obviously, is coming from his humanity. Right?
Sure.
He doesn't want to be crucified. That's
Sure.
painful. That's a legitimate, I'd rather not do this. But part of it is that he is going to lose something that he's never going to get back. Because it's going to be a break between him and the Father.
Uh huh.
That when he raises from the dead, he can never return to that place.
Okay.
in the sense that because always in his story will be this moment when the sin of the world rested on his shoulders.
Yeah,
And there was
though
a
he won't be experiencing the separation, that'll still be an experience that he has had, whereas
Yes.
before he had never had it. That's what
Right.
you're saying. Okay.
Right. And so the things that he tells his story to us after the resurrection involve a sacrifice of his own relationship with Jesus. I mean, with the Father. That had never happened before.
Uh-huh.
And that's just like, so someone posited to me that the crucifixion was a net zero gain. And
Okay.
that he what he gains actually doesn't equal what he loses. Or it evens out in the sense that his relationship with the Father is forever changed.
But is it, I would agree it's changed.
And that it now has a painful
Yeah.
part of it.
But are relationships inherently weaker or stronger for having had a painful...
Oh no, I think
Yeah.
it's stronger. I think it's something we don't think about in Jesus'
Yeah.
story when we talk about it, is that he has this painful moment in relationship with the Father
and
because of
directly, and not just like separation, but wrath.
us. Yes.
Like,
Yeah. The wrath of his Father on
like
him.
I think about Abby. Abby has had. We did a little spanking, very little, but there's this one time where she still brings it up, and it was when she was younger. I can't even believe she still remembers it, and her memory is selective. But I thought she was lying about something, and I asked her if she was when she was younger, and she said she didn't know. And I said, "You either did or you did not lie. Did this happen or not? I don't know." I said, "Okay, if it didn't happen, then you're fine. The day goes on, you play with your cousins. If you did lie, you will get punished. If you don't know, you will get punished." Okay. So she says, "I don't know." Okay. And so she got a spanking. She brings it up to this day of like, this is like she loves me, our relationship is good, but it's like that day was a bad day. So it's not just like separation, like, oh, my daddy wasn't home. My daddy directly punished me, and in her view, unjustly. Now, I think Jesus understands that the injustice was for something, but there would be that, it's not just an experience of like, where was my father, but my father was pouring his wrath out on me.
Yeah.
That's painful.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how much of that, like, Jesus' story actually has an abandonment aspect to it.
Well, are you abandoned when you're being punished?
Well, if there is that sense of, why have you forsaken me? So
Maybe it's both.
Yeah.
And isn't the abandonment already? Because, I mean, just the entry into this world is an abandonment, right? I mean,
He
separated.
has to pray.
He's separate, yeah. He doesn't just have this standard, I'm in the presence of I'm with and in the presence of the distinctness of the person, of the singular God head, is now broken.
Right, but it's a choice within that head to send out the Son into the world.
And it seems as if the Son, it's his desire to do the will of the Father. But the separation begins.
Yes.
Right. So there's separation that already exists, right? And so he's had to run to the Father, go to the mountain to pray, get away from the crowds, seek God's will, just like we have to. Like, it's not different. Like,
And we forget that his sacrifice, that was a huge sacrifice.
That
like
was
way
the sacrifice.
pre-cross.
He leaves the glories of heaven to come to this thing that we've destroyed.
So here's the proposal for this person. If that's true, though, that Jesus is concerned, though, with his glory being manifest on the cross is a big part of God's glory. That the underlying motivation of God is his kenotic thing, his self pouring out. Like, it's not about him. It's about the people he's sacrificing for. And so it's actually
because there's not a net gain.
Yes.
You're saying it's not like he doesn't do the mutually beneficial thing where he says like,
yes,
I will, which let's put it in pastor terms to be like, I will serve you because you will help me have a career that will be good for me.
Yeah.
Get a better life.
But if that were taken away, would I really do it? Which is a
Right.
question I had to face when we started,
Right.
when there was no pay, and I had to ask that question, like, so would I do this with no pay? But so for like that's sacrifice, but you get a gain from it. So
Right.
then, the deepest of sacrifices are when
there's no gain.
there's no gain.
And that's kind of his. So he then says this changes maybe the way we understand the problem of evil. So it's just an interesting thing to toy around with. That maybe next podcast we could talk about or down the road on our long list of podcasting.
Yes, please. Well, here we are, Bisbee Breakfast Club. Rod, thanks for talking.
Yep.
Good to be with you.
Could be.
And see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.